Focus on Liberia. My name is Dennis Jai, and we are broadcasting from Atlanta, Georgia. In this special edition, we're going to be looking at corporal punishment in Liberian schools, or physical punishment, beating, whipping, caning, padding, and what have you. And this is the reason we are discussing this. This has been an age-old problem, but of recent, there have been cases, a reported case at the Lapkiri Mission School in Monrovia, or outside Monrovia, that's Brewerville. And so we want to discuss this. Is this a harmful? Is it helpful? What's the intention? What are we doing about it? And all the 9 years. With me to discuss this, I have the principal of the Greater Vision Academy of Christian School, Greater Vision Christian High School, that is in New Crew Town outside Monrovia, Reverend Toby Town. Toby, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Well, thank you very much, Dennis. It's a pleasure being here tonight.
Thank you so much for joining us. Next, I have the founder and executive director of Kids Education Engagement Project, and I'm Brenda Maseda Brewer Moore. Brenda, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you for having me.
And we are glad to have you, Brenda. And by the way, this is your first time on Focus on Liberia, so we give you our ceremonial cola and say welcome.
Receive. Join in. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Toby, it could be your second or third time.
Yeah.
If you can adjust your camera a little bit, Toby, so you can, if you can adjust. Anyway, I don't want you to temper with that camera. You can just move backward a little bit so we can see it through. That's good.
Okay.
So, corporal punishment. But before we begin, I just want you to, Brenda, just say a little bit about your project. That's the founder, the executive, the Kids Educational Engagement Project. That will set the stage why you are here and why we thought it wise to invite you to be part of this program.
So thank you for having me again, Dennis. Of course, my name is Brenda Moore, and I run a non-for-profit organization called Kids Education Engagement Project. And KEEP, as is most commonly known as, KEEP is involved with education projects in Liberia that centers around 4 main pillars: promoting literacy, computer literacy, advocacy, and economic livelihood. So all of the work that we're doing right now, they're all under those 4 different pillars. We're most known for our promoting literacy pillar, which has to do with creating mini reading rooms and libraries around Liberia, computer literacy, and some people know a little bit about our economic livelihood program. But we haven't been doing a lot of publicity around our advocacy work as much as we do with the other programs. In addition to that, I'm also a published author of several children's books. Actually 5. We're launching the 5th one on Friday. And I have been we've been doing a lot of work on the advocacy side, as I was saying to you before the program started, mostly in public schools. And we've been championing conversations around school-based violence. So one of the things around school-based violence is, of course, corporal punishment. So I guess that's why I've been invited to, because I publicly share my opinions on corporal punishment in the past. And I guess that's why I was invited to this program.
Thank you so much. And I see that one of those opinions you shared 2009 on Front Page Africa is Liberia needs to end corporal punishment in schools. Let me go to Reverend Count. And by the way, Reverend Count and I were born in the same hometown, way behind God's back. And we share that commonality of corporal punishment. But Reverend Count, you've been a principal for ever so long. Just tell me a little bit about your school, what you do, and why is it important that we have your voice in this discussion today?
Thank you so much, Dennis. I'm happy to be part of this conversation. And I have been at the Greater Vision Christian School situated in New Crew Town. And I've been principal of the school almost 25 years going. And I have decided to be part of this conversation on corporal punishment because it appears that the duty that we are called to perform as educators as parents, guardians, has been somehow, one way or the other, be clouded by negative propaganda by some people on the other end. I strongly believe and hold the that corporal punishment or physical punishment can be part of discipline in our schools. So I've come on this conversation to give my view and my opinion on what I feel that should be done from the Liberian setting. So that's why I'm here tonight.
Thank you so much. By the way, if you just joining us, this is focused on Liberia. Our discussion is corporal punishment, and some define it, physical punishment, you may call it, is intended to cause physical pain to a person. And in our Liberian schools, we do that for various reasons. But I'll let the educators and people involved to first of all, let's start with the definition, Brenda. Not everybody understands what corporal punishment is. What's your definition?
I think, well, there are several definitions of corporal punishment. If you look at the examples, even the Ministry of Education gave as corporal punishment, they said flogging, they mentioned flogging, they mentioned picking of pin, etc. Pumping tire, etc. as different types of corporal punishments. Generally, corporal punishment, any kind of pain, of violence you meet out on a child. So the definition can be specific or it can be, broad depending on your context, I guess. But if we're going exactly to what the Ministry of Education defined as corporal punishment, then we're talking about flogging, whether on the hands or on the butt or on the legs, pumping tire, picking up pin, and all of those other things that people feel they should do to correct bad behavior.
Right. And the intention there is to correct bad behavior, as you say. Reverend Count, let's look at...
Dennis, we're assuming that's the reason people inflict pain.
Okay. Oh, that's what they think they say they are doing, right?
That's what I tell you, but sometimes there's more than that.
Yeah. Reverend Count, so let's, what's in your view, what is corporal punishment?
Yes, it's a punishment that includes flogging. You beat the person in the arm, in the palm, or on their back, or you allow somebody, like most time we do on our campuses, to pour water in a drum, sweep because of bad behavior, sweep around the school building, and what have you. So anything that is of physical that you do to correct behavior on the child is my definition of physical punishment.
So as a school principal, do you carry on corporal punishment in your school and give us some of the examples and some of those behaviors that elicit corporal punishment?
Okay, like take for example, in the first place, student coming to school should come to school on time. We come to school on time, we host a flag and have some devotional activities. And then you find out that some students are in a habit of coming to school late. What we notice of late is not definitely that they are coming not on time, but they will come around and then deliberately evade the hosting of the flag and those early morning devotional activities. That's one of the behavior. Now, what we do in that case is that those of them who are fall into that category that we consider as latecomers, sometimes we allow them to pick up papers around. Or what we do, we have like in Liberia now, we have the what we call the virus here. We built a giant size concrete reservoir. We allow those persons to get the buckets, go to the well, and fill those reservoirs that we use for hand washing. And so that's one of the things that we do to those who are are considered as people who violate the law or the rule of the school.
Before I go to Brenda, what is the intent? What is this punishment supposed to do? Discourage the behavior, or?
Yes, it's to allow them, because you dress in your uniform, come to school in the morning, you should be in class, receiving your lessons. Then, because you were not able to be there on time, so they gave you a bucket to go to the well and fill a drum or fill the reservoir. And so next time the child will say, well, I will go on time so that I will not be used to pour water in a drum. So it's there to correct the behavior of the children.
So far, how is that working out?
Say that again.
So far, how is that working out? Let's say the child who was punished yesterday or last month, but hold that thought. Let me go to Brenda. She's smiling too much.
Oh, I'm last one.
Yeah, all right, Toby, and that. So far, let's say student Dennis Jai was punished last week for coming late. So how is that working out? Is the behavior improving because of the punishment?
Yes, Dennis, and it's improving in some cases. But listen, corporal punishment is not the only corrective means by which we instill discipline in our children. Now, what we have at our school is the first offense. The second offense, if that situation has become habitual, what we do is we bring in your parents, and from that level, now is another level that we are going to, where you will face suspension or whatsoever.
Thank you.
According to our handbook.
Thank you. Let me go to Brenda. Brenda, Reverend Count has said a lot. First of all, respond to what Reverend Count said before I even ask you your own question. I could see that you wanted to say something.
I can just respond to Reverend Count generally like that. Let me just say this. So there's a lot of debate globally. It's not just in Liberia around corporal punishment or flogging. So first of all, for me personally, the conversation that I've been having has been, I do not agree that schools should have the authority to flog my child or to flog anyone's child. That's not the role that it should be playing in a child's life, flogging, because there's a thin line between correcting a child's behavior and abuse. And most people, whether knowingly or unknowingly, cross those lines, because once you're holding authority and you are meting out punishment in anger, it's very easy to cross the line. The other thing is, children look up to adults for guidance, for direction, for nurturing, for teaching. They are vulnerable. Why do we call them the most vulnerable in our society? There's a reason why we protect children. We always say, oh, children should be protected. And now if you as an adult, you're not able to correct a child's behavior,
We're having some trouble there, ladies and gentlemen. This is Focus on Liberia, and we are discussing corporal punishment. So let's give some examples of corporal punishment, or Reverend Count. Let's just list, even from our own experience, what you are doing currently in your school, what was done to you, what was done to me. So okay, Brenda is back. So Brenda, I'll let you continue.
Yeah, sorry, just went on. So if the children are vulnerable, and if you as an adult feel that the only way you can correct the behavior, the only way you can communicate with that vulnerable person is by inflicting pain, then we need to question you as an adult. Like, we need to question your negotiation skills, we need to question your communication skills, we need to just question your processing skills, because there are so many ways that you can correct a child's behavior without resorting to violence. That's one. Two, We continually say as a society that stop violence, end violence, don't, settle things in violence. But from an early age, very early age, Dennis, we are teaching them something different. From an early age, we are telling a child that when the child misbehaves or the child does not conform to what we wanted to do, the best way to teach them to be better is to inflict pain and violence. That child grows up understanding that to correct my bad behavior, oh, the child get out now and waste this water. And so we don't want him to waste this water again. And so we beat him. So we are teaching him, we are conditioning him very early on that to correct his behavior of wasting this water, we should inflict pain. So he grows up understanding that for he also to correct someone else's behavior, he must mete out violence and he must inflict pain. So he or she grows up with a lot of anger and not knowing how to communicate and resorting to anger and violence. So he gets beat or she gets beat, he goes into his room, the woman making him vest, the children making him vest. The only way he's able to correct their behavior is to be violent on another person. And we see that circle of violence in our society today. We see how the perpetuation of anger, the perpetuation of violence just permeates our society. Small thing in society right now is people burning cars, looting, etc., etc. Because why? We're teaching them very early on how to correct bad behavior. We must teach it. We must stop it through violence. And so my point has always been, I don't agree with any teacher having that responsibility to beat on a child in school.
Thank you. And before we even go deep into this, let's give some examples of corporal punishment that we ourselves received or that we see around or that are prevalent in the schools. And let me start with you, Reverend Count. You and I were born in the same hometown, and we know what corporal punishment is. Let's do some examples here so people watching us will have an idea what we're talking about here.
Like, take for example, if you were caught violating the policy of the school, you could be flogged.
Yeah.
They will flog you publicly in our days. Or another way, there was a airstrip that was around the place where our school was located. They will measure some feet, and then they give you a cutlass to go and brush. Or better still, they will ask you if this offense is against somebody, like a teacher. The teacher will prescribe that punishment for you. They will say, I will punish you by going on my farm.
Right.
And so forth.
Right.
And so, yeah.
Go ahead. And now coming to Monrovia and in your school and other schools.
Yeah. And of course, not everything that was done in the interior, given our days, I want to be clear about this, was good. But what we are saying, Dennis, is that to some extent, that physical punishment that was given has helped some of us, to some extent, to be where we are today.
Thank you. And before we get to I know there have been a lot of debates around this. Before we get to the pros and cons, let's say some of those things that the child pushing the wall, being whipped in your hand or on your back, you take pin, and they have you have other pump tire, all water, brush grass, and Brenda, what are other forms that come to your mind that you've seen, witnessed, or heard of corporal punishment?
I don't believe the drawing water and cleaning the yard are corporal punishment, quite frankly. It's different from somebody bending a child over on the decks, calling you from the class and flogging you. That's totally different. And so I don't feel that is corporal punishment. That's, like I said, the definition can be broad, it can also be specific.
Sure.
I don't feel that one is corporal punishment. Sorry, my son says I'm supposed to do. The thing is, even the clinic, even now the Teachers Code of Conduct condemns students now going on the teacher's farm in your house to do your housework, like, it's clearly illegal now. You can't do that. So what was, like Reverend said, in the past, it may have been acceptable. Like slavery was acceptable in the past, is no longer acceptable now. Just because something was done 50 years ago does not mean that it was right. So, yeah, so that's my thought on it. And then things like you meant that we've already mentioned, the flogging, the physical flogging, it goes with humiliation, it goes with messing their confidence up. And sometimes, I won't say all the time, but it would be very interesting. And I'm actually planning to do this, to do a poll, an online poll, to find out. Growing up, I know, and I think it still happens today because we work with a lot of young girls, that some of the teachers in the past will find an excuse to fuck a girl simply because maybe he been making moves on the girl and the girl is not complying. And so if he wants to teach her a lesson or to try to quote unquote subdue her, that's an easy way of doing it, flogging her good in front of school, or you late for school. Okay, everybody else get late, everybody else gets 5 lashes and I get 20. So that's why I'm saying there's a thin line between correcting behavior and actually doing it for some other reason.
Good. So now I've seen, because these things are even in homes, right? Even though today we are talking about schools, but also in homes, corporal punishment. Do you know why this is corporal punishment? Is it only for against children or even adults? Because if this is meant to correct behavior in Liberia, what is our experience here? Do we do that to adults too? Corporal punishment in the church, in the ministries.
Precisely.
Right.
Precisely, Dennis. So if we think that you correct someone's behavior, that it was only children behavior you can correct with flogging. So why the criminals are around, we're not publicly flogging them here? Why all the rapists are around, we're not bringing them from the street and flogging them publicly? Why we're putting them behind bars? So obviously we know that that's not the right way to correct behavior. But we put this standards for adults, who can actually bear the flogging for the actual wrong behavior, and then we don't pass the same judgment on children. And here's the thing that people always say. People always say, spare the rod. Bible says, spare the rod and spoil the child. That's the big scripture everybody knows. But guess what? The same Bible even say that men whose penises are cut will not be allowed to the presence of the Lord. They forget about that other one. The same Bible say slavery is acceptable and that you should worship and respect your master. The same Bible goes on to talk about women who are menstruating, and then mother put touch up, you are unclean. The same Bible goes on to say that certain types of fish we should not eat, catfish, crab, etc. We ain't got problem with those parts of the Bible that clearly contravenes the things that we find acceptable. But we'll find one scripture and we'll hold on to that scripture to justify our behavior that is also bad, to get around it. So the main things people do around, most families give, most people give around flogging. I would say spare the rod, spoil the child. But I also did not say you should use the rod to spoil the child either.
Right. Thank you. So the Reverend will address that question later. Okay, go ahead, Reverend. You want to say something?
Okay. I want to thank God very much. And that's not the only scripture that even the Bible is talking about as it relates to corporal punishment. There's another scripture in Ephesians 6, verse 4, that talks about fathers not provoking their children to anger. And then it says that, but what? Instead, nurture them. And so the Bible is not only saying that you should spare the rod or punish the child with the rod so that you correct them. The Bible is not only focusing on that, the Bible is also focusing on other aspects of corrective measure that has to do with talking with them. So from our background, from my background, my argument is that corporal punishment and whatever means that is used to correct behavior can all
Oh no.
They're all good or they're all bad.
Right. And the Bible, Sam Davis, let the Reverend come back because another scripture.
So this is what the Bible is saying in Proverbs that spare the rod and destroy the child. What the Bible is saying is that, I mean, when it comes to correcting the child, use the rod. But I'm not advocating to use the rod to inflict wounds on the child. In fact, the scripture is saying the purpose for which you are correcting the child is because you love the child. And if you love the child, you will not go and extend and inflicting wounds on the child for correcting them. So I want to say here that corporal punishment is not the only thing that the Bible talk about. The Bible also talk about talking to the child and then nurturing them and then giving them examples and living life, teaching them the word of God and living life as example before them so that they will follow you. But if we are to focus on the aspect, I am speaking as an African, I'm speaking as a Liberian. If we focus on the aspect of just talking to the child, there are some children in our country today that talking alone cannot restrict.
All right. So hold that thought because I want us to
use to discipline them. This is where I stand.
Thank you. It's good you brought out that part, which is the cultural part, but hold on, I want to get to it very strongly to see where this whole idea of flogging or
I'm not hearing you.
All right. I think someone tried to call you. That's why I put your phone off so you can go out and come back in. But staying with the Bible, the psalmist said, "Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me." Rod, using the same rod. The rod that is used in Proverbs, talking about spare the rod and spoil the child. Now, the psalm is saying thy rod, God's rod and staff. So if this rod is to be used on children, not to spoil them, I think we should use the same rod on kings and presidents and ministers and church leaders. But that's what I wanted the Reverend to respond to, because the rod is mentioned many times in the Bible, but it looked like we are focused on this part that have to do with children. I'm saying if this corporal punishment is supposed to correct behavior, if we have to use the rod to discipline the child, then it means the Bible is also telling us to use the rod on kings. Reverend Count.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, okay, I hear you now.
The Bible says, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me, right?
Comfort me. Yeah.
So it's the same rod. Is that same rod that is used for the children? So we use the same rod for the presidents and the kings. Does that make sense?
You are quoting Psalm 23, right?
Yeah, the psalmist is saying,
yeah,
the rod. So spanking,
yeah, exactly. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. In other words, God was the one who was dealing with correcting this man who was the writer of the text. He is saying, without your correction, and anything that is pertaining to me, without you, I will not be able to go on as a person.
Right. So my question to you is, does that make the rod also expedient for leaders?
Exactly. The rod is there also to prepare the person, also for leadership, because the reason why we use the rod.
So, Reverend, why are we not beating the president, beating the minister, and beating the principals?
No, we are talking about children, Dennis.
Yeah.
We are not talking about adults.
No, what I mean, the psalmist was an adult who God uses the wrath to comfort, right? So, so by extension, we could use the wrath to also discipline the ministers, the church leaders who are funding little girls. Can we broaden this whole raw thing to cover everybody and not just children?
Well, I don't know, but I think when it comes to the adult, then of course it's another debate altogether. Okay. So I came actually to give my opinion on what I think should be done on the children. And I'm saying my advocacy is that we should not do away with the physical discipline of the children, because it's part of the processes that we can go through to discipline them.
Thank you. And my question here now is, let's go back to our country, right? Because article, and Brenda, I read your article. You even quoted this penal code, Article 5(8) of the Penal Code 1976 authorizes the use of force by parents, by guardians, and teachers against children so as to prevent misconduct. Brenda, is there any research, is there any study whatsoever in Liberia that tells us that these things work?
That's a good, that's, you know, I actually wrote it down to ask that question and to just throw it out, you know. Can anybody honestly tell me where pain was deliberately inflicted on them and that actually brought about sustained behavioral change? Or, and they don't have to answer this question, they just need to answer it to themselves, you know, quietly, you know. Or did you just hide your behavior going forward, or just didn't, you know, it didn't make any difference either or? You're like, okay, it's not worth the hassle of this, and so I'm not going to do it again, not because of the flogging, but just because of the plenty talking or something else that came with it. Can anybody actually say that by beating, you know, flogging, brutalizing somebody else brings about change, you know, that behavioral change? That's a question I honestly want to know. In my experience, and I know I always tell people this, I was a difficult teenager, and my mother, peace be to her ashes, she went through like every kind of punishment you can think about that a parent could try to inflict on a child to change behavior. My mom did it, you know. And what actually made me to start changing was not the flogging. And when I tell people this, they think I'm really exaggerating. It was talking. When my mother realized that the flogging was not working, the humiliation was not working, the punishments, the different kind of punishments was not working, instead of sit me down and have conversations with me on why what I was doing was not good, those self-reflection moments, those conversations made me to think. And I didn't want to think. I didn't want to see how my behavior was affecting her. And I didn't like that. And then I realized that my behavior was actually affecting her negatively. And I didn't want that. So we should get into the habit of having conversations with our children as a way of the first step. And I already mentioned there are several ways that they engage. They can do the warning letter, they can do the cleaning the bathroom, etc., etc. There are different ways, strategies parents should apply or consider before just raising your hand on somebody else. Because if other people start to do the same with you to try to correct your behavior, you can imagine the society we're going to have. Her. Just I mean, by the get in the street, somebody step on your toe, you slap. Somebody slam door in front of you, you get there, you slap because you're trying to correct behavior. You know, but we don't do that. We don't think that's civilized as adults, and I don't think it's also civilized to do that to children. We should get into the habits. We may say with the Africans and all of that, but we should also question why there's a lot of things fundamentally wrong with us as societies, as African societies, that we admire about other societies, or we want to change. What are some of the root causes of some of the things we see in our society? You know, it starts in the family. But what are some of the things that make other things, deeper things happen? You know, and it stems from a lot of this. You know, the violence that we see, that we normalize. Like, oh, nothing, and walk on flogged as children. Yes, because you got flogged as a child does not make it right. You know, because you know, yes, we have to look at these things as a society and see the ones that may have other cultural effects, you know, other, you know, lead ripple effects into our society that make it the society that we see today. That, you
know. Thank you. Well, I count the same question. Do we have any research, any study in Liberia that validates that flogging or spanking or corporal punishment works? And B, to that, and Brenda said that, is there any way for us to know that actually it is the flogging that produced this positive result?
Well, actually, none that I know of. Okay. But in our own upbringing, I think to some extent, the high hand that our parents use help us to come to this level.
What's the evidence?
Like she mentioned. Then she mentioned.
No, sorry to push you, but where's the evidence that the high hand got you where you are today?
Oh, you know the distance we used to travel from the village to come to school.
Right.
And sometimes if it was school day, deliberately we that come from the back there would say we're not going to school. And then if we were found out that there was a school and we didn't go to school, obviously it was going to be, something difficult for us. Our parents will flog us. So,
right.
I mean, because of the fear of being flogged, you will not even want to miss your school.
Right.
Besides that,
no, Toby, I will still hold you because I know the group that you were part of.
Yeah.
All the group from your group, and not to monopolize it, but Toby's village was like 30 minutes away from my village. So before we wake up, a day will pass before we even wake up. I was so young. Sometimes my mom will put me all back to carry me because it's a 1 hour walk. So from your group, how many besides you? How many of in that group that the flogging helped that were able to come out of high school?
Well, that was
10 boys.
It was just an individual different, Dennis.
Exactly.
People, but to some extent, it kept us in school. So what I'm saying is that I want to come to a point that she raised about her mother's discipline. And you notice that her mother did not take one side of the discipline. Even though she said the physical punishment did not help her, it was talking. But I am saying, Dennis, there are some children here. You cannot discipline them by just being one-sided. So my argument is that let us include corporal punishment, or we call it physical punishment, and at the same time continue to talk with them. This will help our kids to be disciplined.
Thank you.
But as the question you asked, I have not had any data as it relates to what our corporal punishment have brought discipline, except my own case.
Thank you. And there is also no data. 1 second, Brenda. Also, there is no data that the people the children you refer to that only corporal punishment can work. There is no data to back that up. So it's just an assumption. Go ahead, Brenda.
Yeah, so it's actually just a question. It's not, and it's to the audience as well. Knowing what we know now, if you were to go back in time with the same knowledge you have now, and your teacher raised hand to flog you, you would think your body and say, "Come flog me because I live for school." Like, would you happily accept flogging?
No, I didn't know. No.
Oh boy, okay. My question answered.
I want to share an experience, and each of you, if you can, I know Brenda, you share your experience. I want you to share your corporal punishment experience, and I want to start. I was in 2nd grade, and I was younger than most of my classmates in 2nd grade. We have this teacher, peace be to his actually, he was the township commissioner. He has come from Monrovia, township commissioner. But when you enter that place, as long as you have a little bit of education, you can be a teacher. So the reason I was primarily being beaten for was when it comes to the notes. We come to school and say, bring your note to inspect the notes. And here is the problem I had. He will write so much on the board, right? So he will write like from top bottom. And then in order to write the other one, he will erase the top part to continue writing the notes. So me as a child now, I believe that, that was wrong. So I will erase that in my notes too. I did not get the concept that there was a continuation. I thought he made a mistake and he was erasing it. So I will go and erase it. So by the time the school day is over, maybe I have just one sheet of paper and it doesn't make any sense because I'm erasing because the teacher has erased. So the next day he will beat me. So I had a bigger sister in the same class. So he said, Dennis, and she could write with both hands. Very good. He said, Dennis, I will write it so we'll carry home and study together. And fun. By the time we finish doing the notes, by the time we get home, I've memorized it. So to me, there was really no need to write. But when we come back and inspected that note, I was always beaten. And that scared me so much that by the time he entered the class, I would start crying. until you call me. He said, you will give me the question when I answer. He said, but you know it, why are you crying? So for people to believe that maybe that helped me, or I don't know how it helped me. Any of you willing to share your beating story?
I mean, we all have beating stories. I think you read one of mine in my article, and that's just one. I shared the one about, getting running away from school, and then his teacher decided on my birthday, and then the teacher deciding to flog. But that's just one. There's another one. That's why I said it's a thin line. So that's another time. I think I was in 11th grade or so, and I had done well in the previous two periods, and I think I came third and first. And then this third period, I dropped. I think I went to like fourth or fifth place. And the principal, rather than trying to, find out from me why I dropped in my lessons, he felt that the best way to actually remind me of my place, that I was dropping in my lessons, I was following useless children, was to call me at the front of the school, in front of the entire school, and flog me 25 lashes and said that when that lesson for you to pay attention to your lesson because you are following these useless children. So at no point did he call me to find out from me. You were at third place. You started the school year, you came first, then you came third, now you're at fifth place. What's happening with you? Maybe it's something from your family, maybe it's something else that's bothering you. None of those questions were asked, but the only thing he could do was to come into the front of the school and with me. So that's why I'm saying I think there's a lot of abuse, there's room for abuse, and at the school level, no school authority, no school teacher, nobody there should have that authority to beat on someone's child. We can discuss the flogging at the home on a different conversation, but for the purpose of this, the school-based flogging for me is totally wrong, and that's why I try to do a lot of awareness in the schools that we work in. We do a lot of trainings with teachers on the teacher's code of conduct. We do a lot of trainings with the students that are in the different school clubs that we have on school-based violence, because people focus, okay, yes, we're talking about corporal punishment, but there are other types of school-based violence that are in the schools as well. Bullying is there, etc. So there are many stories we can all tell about flogging, and at one point, I just became immune to flogging, because in my mind, if I do that, the worst you can do to me is to flog me. So I'm prepared, can't beat. What thing will happen? What will change? Yeah.
Thank you. And we have a number on the screen for our viewers to call. But let me come to you, Reverend Count, on another part of the corporal punishment is, first of all, let's look at some reason. You listed reason like coming late, but other reason why students get punished physically in school is if they fail a class, if they misspell a word. In fact, we have a scenario where students beat other students. So if they ask you to spell characteristics and you miss it, they will beat you in your palm that number of letters that you in that.
And even your failure to do your assignment at home, if they give you homework and you fail to do that homework, you come to school, they will punish you for that. And that's another reason. And like you talk about in a sometimes it will be a spelling game that they are playing. If they ask you to spell the word and you misspell it, another person spell it correctly, then of course they will punish you. And I had that experience when I was in a elementary school, and because somebody was able to punish me, when I went home, I decided now henceforth to always study my lesson, and so that I would not allow my friend to beat me in the classroom. So I am of the opinion that while it is true that talking can help, but I am saying in our Liberian society, talking alone cannot bring discipline in our country.
Thank you. Let's look at the cultural aspect, because there's a whole lot of talk about this thing is cultural. The African children, you cannot only talk to them, or you cannot do any other punishment is beating that will help. Where does this spanking and corporal punishment come from in your view? Is it from the African culture? Is it from the West? Is it something we're taught? Is it something? Where does it come from?
Well, that is something I was reading. Our education system was first of the British type, and then it said it was the British that introduced the issue of corporal punishment in our school. It's just quite recently that we started using the American books. But when you talk about local manner in our time, those way back educators, they were reading the British books. So somewhere I learned that this type of punishment was introduced by the British.
Right. So it's not an African thing you were saying?
Say that again.
It's not an African. And let me see. Okay, let me go to Brenda and see. Brenda, what's the origin of corporal punishment in our schools? Is it cultural? Is it something we borrow? Is it something we learn?
I don't know if it's something that I would say even is cultural. And I've never really explored the origins of it. But thinking aloud, where does flogging? What do we know? When we think about flogging and we think about whips, what comes to mind? Slavery, right? To whip people into submission, whipping. So maybe we need to explore whether it was something that was brought here to us. The whole idea of correcting our behavior by inflicting pain. The slaves misbehaving, you take the whip, you beat on them.
Right.
So it may have been left here with us, and we see it as the only way that we are able to communicate and correct each other's behavior is to inflict some kind of flogging. I've never explored the history of it, but I'm just thinking aloud that may also be a factor.
And I think you are spot on. Yes, sir.
In the traditional schools, there were schools here before, and in the traditional schools, there were means by which people were corrected.
Means. Underline that
And
one.
yeah, I'm talking about the Corporal and the Sandy Society, which were means of education before the Western education came. So, I mean, the issue of punishing somebody physically was also here in Africa.
Right. I mean, physical beating. And let me give you what I read. When I tried to explore about this topic, there is a video on YouTube where, and exactly, Brenda, you are spot on. According to the educator, it came from slavery. He said because from the anthropological studies, there is no data that the slaves, when they came, there was this idea of flogging or corporal punishment in West Africa. So this came from slavery, where the master, when your child misbehaved, you would take on the challenge to say, let me beat, because if you allow the master to beat, that the master will kill. So you want to show the master that you are able to discipline your child and bring them into submission, and tell them that, hey, I'm able to do it. And then when it said there is no data, I started thinking, and if we go back to our hometown, Reverend Count, most of the people that were flogging were those that had some level of what we know today as civilization. So it was immediately in the schools. Our parents really did not flog us. So if they wanted to beat us, they either go to the school and tell them to beat you. And another thing that I read was the Africans, we name our children after, so children are precious. Children are named after the ancestor, your grandmother. Like Toby was named after his grandfather. So his father is not going to even lay a finger on him because he sees him as his dad. So from that understanding, I try to, and we have not explored that in detail, but I'm trying to believe that actually corporal punishment is foreign. It's a foreign idea. And I may be wrong, but so far that's what I learned.
Okay.
So the whole idea that these children are African, so the only way we can correct them is to beat them, I think that is not true. I have my own children here in America. I come from all the way beyond God's holy bike. So my children are Africans too. They don't beat them at school. They don't do anything to them. And they're pretty good. But Brenda, my question to you is, Even in America, corporal punishment is here. So why are you being so tough on Liberia? They are only
Oh,
19.
sorry, finish.
No, I said 19 states. Corporal punishment is allowed. Of those states, Georgia is one. But I've been here since 2013 when my daughter, who's in college now, was in the 5th grade, and nobody has laid a finger on any of them in school. So even though they say corporal punishment is allowed in 13 states, I've not had that experience. Brenda, the counter argument is, hey, corporal punishment is in Liberia too. What do you say to that? I see in America too.
So many countries have not totally eliminated corporal punishment. But the thing is, you know that in right now in Africa, you probably have about six or seven countries that have totally banned it, whether in daycare, whether in homes, whether in jails, etc. So it's totally banned in about 6 or 7 countries. You have about 50% of the remaining countries that have partially banned it. So meaning your parents are allowed to beat on their children, but it's not allowed in schools, and it's not allowed in jailhouses, for example, as a means of correcting behavior. And there are some countries where it's just totally not even discussed. So I think it's progress that's being made. I'm not stressing just on Liberia. I'm having this conversation about Liberia because I'm a Liberian. I live in Liberia. And I'm personally invested in the school system we have here. Just because every other country, including America, hasn't totally banned corporal punishment doesn't mean we shouldn't work towards totally banning corporal punishment. Slavery didn't end overnight. It took hundreds of years. It took decades after slavery ended in one part of the world before we had a ripple effect. The main thing is that we're having these conversations now to question the reason why we think we should be doing this, whether it's effective or not. So it's a good start, and I'm hoping that as time goes by, we will continue to reflect and change. I'm hoping that beyond a policy, because right now all we have that's backing us is a policy. We don't have a law that totally bans corporal punishment in schools. Perhaps that is where the next level of advocacy needs to move towards, to see if we can have a law that clearly states there should be no corporal punishment. Even the children's law allows a degree of flogging, and it doesn't say flogging. It says a degree of punishment that the parents best sees as effective or useful. So that's very vague. Somebody can tell how to waste it on a child and say that's the punishment I see as being effective, you know. So with time, hopefully, because if you leave it open, that's what happens. Anybody can interpret the law as they see fit. So hopefully in time we'll see more countries fully adopting, the banning of corporal punishment, whether in home, whether in schools, whether in jailhouses completely.
Thank you. And one person who was invited who was not able to make it is Attorney Mombedo Joa, and she was going to give us the legal side of it. But from what we read, is our penal code authorizes some use of force by our parents, our guardians, and our teachers. Also, it is in the children's law that provides for a justifiable correction. So,
exactly.
That's what I was saying, yeah. So if these things happen in school, and
exactly.
The example is the Lakero case, and the Lakero Mission School case, where this principal beat the girl. There was another case of a principal, I think the principal and the proprietor, they are, father and son, and they beat a girl. Exactly. Can these things be taken to court and you have a redress because that first person was charged?
Yeah. So you see the Lakera case is coming up now because the parents decided to stand up. They didn't like what happened. The child was flogged over a period of 2 days for coming to school late. And I hear that with most schools, and I was quite shocked to hear this, honestly, that the process of even meting out the punishment is where the child has to lean over on the decks like this. and your hands have to be flat on the desk. And if at any point in time you lift your hand up from on the desk, the flogging starts all over.
Recount.
Yes. So you
So
will
the
start. So
recount.
if you reach the number 9, if you're supposed to receive 10 lashes and you reach the number 9 and the person instinctively reacts in pain, you flog the person jack it up, you got to start from 1. How is that correcting the person's behavior for being late for school? There's so many reasons someone can be late for school in this day and age. Like your traffic is crazy, that is how you choose to correct the behavior. So this issue is coming up now because the parents decided enough was enough.
Yeah.
So perhaps when we start to see more parents standing up and suing schools, you will see a change in this. Because yes, like the law, the Domestic Violence Law Act provides that even flooding in schools now, inflicting violence on the child, because if the child is placed in your care, you are considered a caregiver. You are protected. You're a protector of the child. If you flog, you can't be prosecuted as aggravated assault. So yeah, if parents start to really, if they have evidence of it and they want to pursue the case, yes, these cases can actually go to court and it could become a really big thing.
Recount, before we go to our comments, I want you to comment on that. Has a school principal, have you been taken to court yet? Has any parent reacted or complained, or have you even had complaint of some of your teachers who will just beat someone and you find that unjustifiable?
Yes, of course, we had a situation. And Dennis, I must be clear here. I'm not talking about those excesses that other schools carry on.
Where do you draw the line?
Yeah, where I draw the line is that physical punishment should be used as a corrective means, not to brutalize the child. But in the case that she explained, in that Lokiri case, obviously, I wouldn't back that. I would consider that as being brutal.
Yeah.
But where I'm coming from is that we had a situation where even one of our teachers beat a child, and then the right hand hit the hand, and then there was injury done to that child. Even though we're not taken to court, but it became our responsibility as a school, because the level at which that beating was done, it was not intended to bring any correction. It was being brutal. So we took care of the hospital bill and then everything. So, but we are not come to the level of going to court. But this is my point, Dennis. Why it is true that some of those SSs do exist, but can we draw a line that outrightly the raw will not be taken out of our school? Because if it happens, it's like the garbo or training that we have as institution will be partially, executed. Because
Reverend Count, I'm here in America. I'm in Atlanta, right?
Yeah.
Beating is not there. So are the kids here worse off than those back home?
Dennis, you don't compare your society with the society in which we find ourselves. Okay, I am talking about a society in which I find myself in Liberia.
Right.
So this is a point from which I speak.
But what's the difference, though? Okay, let's leave that. But let me get clarity on when you say brutal. So when you say it shouldn't be to an extent, are you saying let's have it should be 10 latches or 5 latches, or how much force should be exerted? How do you actually draw this line? That's what I'm trying to get at.
Okay, like of course, maybe 1 or 2 latches in the hand of the child, moderately.
And what should be used? Should it be rattan? Should it be belt?
Yes,
should it be your king?
We should use rattan.
All right.
We should use rattan.
Thank you. I have callers and I have comments. So let me tell you, my pastor told me this story because the people that really do the corporal punishment are out of it, the teachers, the pastors, religious, and all. So he had a rattan in his house on the wall. And guess what was the inscription under the rattan? It came from, anyone can take a guess? I need thee every hour. With that,
Oh,
with that, we go to our callers. Let me see. We have one caller on the line. Caller, your name and where you calling from?
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Oh, hey, Dave. This is Jimmy Eastman calling from Washington, D.C. Very interesting conversation, and I really appreciate your guest. As a parent, I like to speak from a parent's point of view. As a parent of 7 children, I can tell you that corporal punishment may evoke immediate compliance, but it doesn't promote good behavior. So we have to be careful to that our impatience is not what we're not addressing our impatience to deal with the issue and just immediate reacting by corporal punishment. Sometimes you have to analyze what is the cause of the behavior that the child is exhibiting. Well, are they really restless? Are they mad? Is something wrong? Is something bothering them? Are they challenged and they don't know how to express their frustration? I want to tell you, as a child myself, in the 2nd grade, I used to get in a lot of trouble. But they found out, my teacher took the time and tried to analyze why this guy gets in so much trouble. So she would call me and ask me, had I finished my work? And I say yes. And so I'm walking around the class. And she called me again. After about 3-4 times calling me, had I finished my work, and she found out I had completed my work in a short amount of time, she realized I was not being challenged. So they switched my class immediately. So we have to take the time and analyze the root cause of the child's behavior. And simply using corporal punishment is impatience. And is not a lasting corrective measure.
Thank you, Jimmy. And Reverend Kama, I want you to respond to that. But before you respond, let me add this because we had the same experience. We both of us walk over an hour to get to school. And one reason why they beat us was if you are late. As a child, you're talking about 7 years old, 8 years old. What control do I have over walking from that place to town, crossing 4 creeks, and if I'm late, you beat me? How would that beating correct that behavior? Will it make me to maybe get in a car, maybe?
No, what will happen is that as a student, if your parents were there delaying, preparing you to come to school, you will be the one to tell them the situation that you will go through if you get late at school. Hello?
Yeah.
We can hear you.
So I am saying what the help is going to give you is to always remind you that if I fail to get to school on time, definitely I'm going to get punished. So if there's anything, whether your parents delaying to do anything that will prepare you on time, you will be telling them to prepare you sooner so that you get to the school so that you wouldn't be punished. And I am saying also that's another means of correction.
Okay. And Brenda, you think really with the scenario I just said, you think that's going to help me be to school in time? I'm walking 1 hour. I'm a child.
If they were flogging your parents for making you late, they will make sure you leave. If they were flogging your parents for delaying you, if we're going by Reverend Tove's example that maybe your parents are the ones delaying you, then they will make sure that you leave on time because they don't want to get flogged. In this day and age, honestly, with the kind of, I'm speaking, I live in Liberia, I work in Liberia full time. And just to even my house without traffic is literally about 7-8 minutes. But because of the kind of traffic we have here now, it takes me about 30 to 40 minutes just to get from Baptist Seminary to Rehab Junction. That short distance, you can imagine the amount of traffic. So there's a lot of traffic in town now. There's a lot of fear around also the whole Hamid business that's going on. So people not comfortable waking up, leaving their homes at 5 o'clock, etc. So these are all factors that people have to look at before you just get it. Start flogging somebody child over a period of 2 days for being late. Okay, maybe this girl lives at the back of the school, like we found out the girl lives right at the back of the school. But there are other means. Remy mentioned that talking cannot be the only way you can correct a child's behavior. And I agree. There are so many other ways you can correct a child's behavior without resorting to inflicting deliberate pain and violence on the child. You don't only have to talk, but there are other ways you can strategies you can apply. Even in life, when you're doing one job and working, you will find another strategy to make money. You're not sitting and say only the particular thing I'll continue to do. So why we can't get into the habit of trying to understand, like the caller said, understand deep, a little deeper. It's laziness on our part, and we feel the easiest way to change behavior is to inflict pain.
Yeah.
On children.
And Brenda, if we look at it the other way, what if, and Reverend Count, you can answer that too, what if instead of punishing, we reward for good behavior that will make other people want to come? Let's say people are coming late and say, okay, if you are on time, you're going to get this reward. And wouldn't that elicit better behavior than say, okay, just beat? Instead of rewarding good behavior, we are only punishing bad behavior. So there's no incentive for the good students to do well. Have you looked at it that way?
That's another way, Dennis. That's why I was saying that there are several ways that this bad behavior in the children can be corrected. And so, like you said, by rewarding those who are good, and then those who have this bad behavior, looking at the good ones, being rewarded. There's another way. Right. But again,
Toby, before you continue, is flogging the last resort? Let's say we try everything else fails, so we go to the corporal punishment. Or do we really? Or is it the first thing that comes to our mind?
Well, I want to use our school as an example.
Yeah.
We are not actually using the right term now because of situations that are happening in our country as it relates to the incident that you made mention of the pastor and his son went to jail. And I strongly believe that because it was political issues, so that's why they took it at that level. But we have decided not to engage into that. But like you asked the question, is flogging is the first thing? No, we said no. In our handbook, like I'll give you an example of coming to school late. There are several, other punishments that we carry on. But there are certain type of behavior. After all of the other things being exhausted, there are certain type of behavior that require us to use it.
Thank you. Let me bring on one more caller. Caller, you are live. Your name and where you calling from?
This is Muhammad Sharif from Clifton Heights, Pennsylvania.
Go ahead, Mr. Sharif.
Yeah, so we have to be very careful in terms of how we, go about trying to, prolong, our own suffering. What would that mean? That for a long time, we thought that this kind of punishment, was the way for, kids to learn, right? I came from a school, when I was in elementary school at Wildwood Institute, we had a teacher, and his name was Teacher Pepper. The Teacher Pepper, everything that he did was beating. The first thing was beating. The next thing was beating. So if you didn't know how to spell, like the Reverend is saying, I will flog you. You're going to be flogged. All of those things, and Teacher Pepper will be the first one to tell you, a child, you will be quick to say, you're a bloody fool and you're this and that, you're not going to learn. So the child gets insulated. At some point, I wasn't afraid anymore. I took a lot, I took some beatings, right? But at some point, I wasn't afraid anymore. And so that's what it does. In the long run, the child gets insulated, and the intended purpose, while, the Reverend's talking about training, it doesn't work all the time. And I also remember real quick, I was in Arabic school first. So you think that the English school, the Arabic school was really, really tough, right? So if you didn't go to school,
if you miss a day, if you were late, those kinds of things. And they made me to basically drop out of that, of my Arabic school. And I, went back to my mom and told her that I wasn't going to do this anymore. Right. And so, these things, although while we may still believe that they help, I mean, it has some unintended consequences.
Thank you. Thank you. And our panelists, please hold that. Let me bring on the second caller. Caller, your name and where you calling from?
Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, this is me, River Says Pro. How you guys doing?
River Says Pro, we're fine. Okay, River Says, if we go ahead before they charge you per minute.
Yeah, man. Thank you very much. This is a very interesting topic. This is very informative and educative. I went to a school in Liberia. I don't want to be personal with his name, but this principal was from the United States of America, and he knew the values there. He knew that people don't beat up kids here. But this guy, well, let me call it school, the Haywood Mission School, for people who know it, Reverend Leo Simpson. He was from the United States. He was a reverend. But when something went wrong, we were beaten with foot like a flat stick, beat me. And then, at the time, you didn't see it as a big deal. But, his kids, they used to come and visit us in Liberia. When we looking at them, well, but then when I came to the United States, I realized, wait a minute. So all these why this guy, he's from the United States, he was educated, and he know that they don't do these things here. Why is it that he was doing it or was it like a cultural issue? It's just that, and he's a Liberian man. He's I think lawman guy, but he grew up in the in the system. So as I came to the United States, I'm beginning to retrospect, like, why did he do this thing to us, knowing fully well that they did not do it to his children here, and they don't do it here in the United States. So my question to you guys is, I know people mention for cultural issue. It's that just because we are African or because we are Liberian, that's why, he did that? Or, why do they do that, knowing that they don't, they can't do it yet?
Thank you. And they did a statistic of corporal punishment in America here, and what they found is boys and minorities are the one that they beat most of the time. In Liberia, is it? I'm thinking maybe the females are the one that are disproportionately being beaten. Maybe, Reverend Count, you can respond to your caller and also that little thing that I put on it.
Well, Dennis, I think my point actually is the same. We are not the ones that made ourselves. God created us, and there's absolutely no law in the world that man has today that was never created by God. One of the ways that God wants us to raise our children very effectively is what? To punish them, like we call physically, or in a way that will bring correction in their life. And so talking to them also is another way that the Bible speaks about, I told you about in Ephesians 6:4. Now, where we stand now as Liberians, what do we want? I am in Liberia. Do you see our culture? Do you see what we have? Or is it because another person next door is singing this song, so that song will suit us? This is where I stand. I am of the that for us to bring discipline in our Liberian society, a solid one, corporal punishment should be one of the ways by which we can discipline our kids.
Right.
This is my.
Thank you. And Brenda, before I bring you in, let me read a few comments here. This one, Reverend Khan, is from someone who knows you very well. He said, there is no justification for corporal punishment. Toby, please symbolically burn all the ratans in your school and ban flogging outrightly in your school. If you do, I will contribute some funds to your school. So you have a challenge there. So that's a comment. Let me get a few more comments here. Promo say, I agree with you, Dennis. The part of Liberia I'm from, it was difficult for my parents to beat me because of my grandfather's name I'm using. Seattle Townsend, I'm late. Did you already cover the legal aspect? Is this legal? Yes, Seattle is legal. I would say that for sure. Also, Flomo say, Danny, is there any data on parents who talk to their children without spanking them? And I have not advocated for any form, but what I believe is this flogging thing, it has never worked, or at least there's no data that flogging people can do that. Attorney Mobedo Joase, until 2016, I couldn't sleep in a room by myself. I was traumatized. Some persons in our church, intending to discipline my brother and I, put us in a dark room where the belongings of a church member who died were kept. Johnny say, I think you, Dennis, know about how you grew up. Yeah, definitely I know. Steve Wilson, if I tell my daughter that I will take her phone, she will do everything good because she doesn't want her phone taken away from her. Talking about different form of punishment. Wisdom, Kindness, Alvin Jones publicly flogged some accountants at the Ministry of Finance. I remember that. He put them on the pole and publicly beat them to correct so that they won't steal again. Jerome Roberts, so why going under that punishment? Are they not still missing their lesson? I don't think that is helping the children learn in that country. So a child, misspell and you beat them. Brenda, your thoughts?
On which one? Because there's so many things that have popped up.
I know.
Very consistent.
Anyone.
I mean, for those who just joining the call, I've been very consistent over the last couple of years on my position on corporal punishment, but also just any and all forms of violence. I do not feel that you can really change behavior long term by just inflicting pain on a child. I think there are several other ways that you can educate your child. You can change their behavior positively or negatively by having conversations with them. I don't believe that any school authority, no school authority should have the power to beat on a child. I stand by that. I mean, I don't personally believe in it. I don't believe any school should have that authority. I'm hoping in the coming years we can be able to have a law that just clearly stops it. Yes, the Domestic Act talks about it, but the children's law should also be updated to reflect that as well. There's a very thin line between correcting behavior and abuse. And a lot of times those lines are crossed very easily under the guise of correcting behavior, or the children can listen. So I don't feel any form of pain being inflicted on a child should be used in a school setting at all.
And Brenda, let's think about this for a minute, right? If okay, let me put in these two comments. Seattle Townsend said, your culture and society is a mess and a disgrace. Try something different. Stop brutalizing and traumatizing children. Dave Jar said, if brutal punishment could reform our society, the world who have corrected every ill of our society will use guns to correct the system. Where are we today? And I think what we sometimes do in our society is we do not show the connectedness of these things. So we are beating people for maybe failing a class or misspelling a word, for coming late, for doing all these things. So if kids jump up in the name of militancy and lock up their principal or block a street, we think that's different, right? We think they don't have any connection. Or if we take gun because somebody is corrupt, we don't see the connection. What you think, Brenda, is the link between this legalizing of physical pain, inflicting pain as a form of instilling good behavior or corrective measure to what we have in our larger society? People are.
Sorry. No, finish your sentence. Sorry.
No, I said from what we see, or the executive committee of CPP, they were locked up. We see people burning tires. Me and a student from University of Liberia campus, they are on the road and doing all kinds of things. When the war came, most of the people we saw carrying guns and meting out punishment against others were children. what is the link between the legalizing of corporal punishment to what we see in the greater society?
I mean, I said this in the beginning. It's for me, we don't have any clear data. We haven't done research, but it's so clearly evident. We teach our children, we tell our children violence, no to violence. It is coincidentally International Peace Day. And we tell our children no to violence, no to violence. But we teach them, we condition them from a very early age that to correct bad behavior, we should inflict violence, we should inflict pain. And so they go through that circle in life, just basically understanding that to correct bad behavior, if my friend do me bad, I'll jump into a fight, but we don't see how that connects to a child growing up and thinking the only way he can get attention is by being violent. The only way he's going to get redress to his issues that he's having in society is to be violent. You see, yes, people can have peaceful demonstration, but we see a lot of the demonstrations, resulting into violence because they feel that if they just stand peacefully, nobody will react. So the only way is to, be violent. And yet we're not seeing the correlation between how we're bringing up our children to what we're seeing in the bigger society. So I'm just clear. I don't stand for it. I don't agree with it. I frown on it and I don't do it. There are so many ways that I discipline my children. Like I mentioned earlier, growing up, I don't think my mother's different strategies worked because flogging, I became immune to flogging. I was like, okay, if I would literally be walking around with small short jean trousers under my uniform, just ready anytime for the flogging. Double my underwear so that it will flog me, I will not feel it. What worked was the conversations, those reflecting moments, conversations really helped. There are other things we can do in our society. We fold them from playing with their friends, keeping them inside for a little bit, taking their phones, things that they like to do. Withhold those things from them. Give them extra work to do in the yard, keep them busy. And it takes them away from other things that they don't like to do. But to just solve a problem, to change somebody's behavior by just, it's cruel. For me, it's cruel.
I believe so too. My experience teaching in a refugee school in Guinea, I was teaching science in 7th grade, and this child he misbehaved, and the punishment I gave him was to sing a song before the class. He outrightly, because I knew that this child is shy, right? He couldn't. So he said, "Teacher, just beat me." I said, "No, I don't beat students." And for like 10 minutes, that guy was like, he was almost crying. He didn't want to sing. So the other, kids they will come over, then they will say, "Okay, let me sing." But I said, "No, you sing." And he couldn't. For almost 10 minutes, he couldn't.
So you choose humiliation.
Yeah, from that day, he said, no, the purpose was not to humiliate, was to make him sing. And he said, no. So from that day, he never misbehaved because
he didn't want to be humiliated.
Yeah, he doesn't want that. He doesn't want singing. So, Brenda, let's end it. And I also believe that if we agree as a society that corporal punishment have positive results, I think we should extend it to our churches, where pastors who molest kids in their churches, those who tell lies, those who mislead their congregation and ask for money in exchange for prayer and blessing, and they clearly know they are lying, maybe we should whip them too. Ministers, officials, other leaders, let's extend it, and not children alone, because at least for some children don't even understand corporal punishment. So I believe if we take that, in the legislatures, for example, and start beating people, maybe it will help. Let me get your
I'm even talking nothing on the lawmaker to them before they call speak for me again.
Yeah, they can call us speak from me now. But let me get your closing statement. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you for the opportunity to share my thoughts on this very important topic. I'm not happy that something happened for us to be having this conversation, but I'm also happy that the conversation is being held. I've been talking about this since 2018. I think you saw I wrote an article in 2019 about it. My organization, Keep Liberia, has been doing trainings in a lot of public schools around corporal punishment, but just in terms of teachers' behavior as well, using the teachers' code of conduct. We've done it in about 17 schools now. I think the number might be a little bit more. And we've started to educate the kids as well, on different forms of school-based violence. I strongly believe that as a parent, we have many tools in our arsenal that we can apply to change children's behavior without resulting to inflicting deliberate pain on them to make them behave better. Because if they start doing the same thing to us, not a different story entirely. We should do better as a society towards those we consider the most vulnerable in our society, the children. We have a duty to protect them, and by inflicting pain on them deliberately because they misbehave is not protecting them. We can apply other means of correcting the behavior. We can apply other means of making them better human beings and teaching them that violence is the key. I do not believe that any school authority should have the power to raise their hand on a child and inflict pain. They should not be given that authority, and I'm hoping that long-term, some of the advocacies that we're doing, we can, escalate it to the point of actually seeing that the laws are updated to reflect the current reality that we have. Thank you again for having me on the show.
Thank you so much, and we want to have you back as your schedule will permit. We want to thank all our viewers. We want to thank Reverend Count. There were some issues on this side, and he couldn't end the show with us. And maybe those who caused the problem for which he couldn't end the show, we should beat them too. Well, that's a joke. On that note, we want to end on this note that say we are all Liberians. Whether you believe corporal punishment works or not, whether you believe that is going to change anybody's behavior, we are all Liberians. Because what I know from my experience in school is our country probably teach only to A students. We have no data of the students that left school completely because of corporal punishment. We only see sometimes the few students that came up because they were whipped, and we think it works. Until there is data to show that these things work, let us be able to put some money in research and know for sure whether it work for true before we tend to do it. On that note, we want to say thank you so much for joining. We end with our song that says we are all Liberians.
We are Liberians.